In 2013, Taylor Sheridan began writing various screenplays for a drama series with a neo-Western spin. In 2017, Paramount Network greenlit the series Yellowstone. Upon airing in 2018, the show would turn out to be a monumental success. Ratings hit an all-time high by the end of Season 3, and Paramount had every average suburban middle-aged man sporting a cowboy hat with a fresh pair of nut huggers to boot. But naturally, the corporation smelled the amount of money they may be losing out on if they don't milk this cash cow for all she has. So in 2021, Sheridan signed a 5-year deal with Paramount and MTV to start birthing and canning spin-off ideas until something stuck. And what they landed on was a prequel series entitled 1883. The plot is quite simple. James Dutton, the great-grandfather of John Dutton, meets with his family in Fort Worth, Texas. They then meet with a group of immigrants and attempt to travel the Oregon Trail in search of freedom and a place to call home. And that's it. That's the plot. Sure, there are major things that get in the way, but for all that it's worth, it's a simple story to be told. It pains me to say this, but I consider the show a huge failure. 1883 executed a lot of things well, but it has character arc problems, juvenile narration, major continuity issues, and some downright irredeemably bad dialogue.
She is a widow.
How am I supposed to respond to that?
From this point on, there will be massive spoilers for this show and potentially parts of Yellowstone. Consider yourself warned. The show starts with the flash forward of Elsa Dutton in a confrontation with some Indians on an open plain, and this already had me questioning the writing choices. I'm not sure why the directors opted into this flash forward scene. Perhaps it was to inform us that Elsa Dutton is the protagonist while allowing her to grace us with her first narration. I sincerely doubt that they thought that there wasn't enough action in the beginning of the show. I can't find any justifiable reason for them to show this flash forward. Allow me, dear viewer, to show you how a flash forward can be used as a writing tool to heighten an audience's experience. The following segment will spoil parts of the TV series Breaking Bad, if there's anybody in the world who hasn't seen it yet. Breaking Bad was known for its frequent flash forwards, starting as early as the pilot. Unlike 1883, Breaking Bad has very little action in its first 20 minutes or so. Therefore, it's a fairly justifiable writing choice to blueball the viewer with the pilot's climax to ensure it can retain its viewer's interest and prove it has something to offer. It's important for me to note that I don't agree with all the flash forwards after the one in the pilot, but there is one that comes to mind that I consider one of the most excellent pieces of writing in cinematic history. Season 2's premiere starts with a pink teddy bear floating in a pool. The same image is shown during episodes 1, 4, 10, and 13. Each time the clip is extended to add to the conundrum. The steady build-up over a whole season is ominous and leaves the viewer questioning just what the fuck is going to happen and how does that stupid children's toy relate to the story. When we finally arrive at the mysterious conclusion, the season ends with 2 planes colliding over Walter White's house and the pink teddy bear falling into the swimming pool. This illustrates Walter's actions, even indirectly, are affecting more and more people around him. It's not just his wife and kids that are suffering, it's his entire city of Albuquerque. It's a very deep and mature metaphor for a series that consistently personifies just that. If you still need any convincing, to add to the brilliant writing, the 4 episodes titled in order are 737, Down, Over, Albuquerque. Absolutely chilling. If you haven't ever taken the time to watch the show, I highly recommend it. Anyway, where were we? The cast is comprised of mostly newer actors and the renowned country music stars Tim McGraw and Faith Hill. Sam Elliott gives an outstanding performance as Shea Brennan, a haggard former Army captain who's lost everything and is only around to find a better place to die. He is strong and abrasive when he needs to be, and compassionate on occasion. Both sides of him come off as believable. I do think that Shea Brennan is a heavily flawed character. He acts as though he doesn't care who makes it to Oregon with the way he leads his group of immigrants. I expected early on we would witness him training them how to shoot or giving them pointers on how to cross a small stream on a wagon without fucking dying. And seriously, these German immigrants are paying him to take him there, and for the most part he's like, nah, they'll figure it out sooner or later. He proceeds to bitch about the immigrants and how they're helpless numerous times throughout the series, but after they leave Fort Worth, he never trains them. We're expected to believe that there's weeks or months in between episodes, yet the immigrants are just as useless in the beginning of the show as they are at the end.
At some point, they gotta learn to do things for themselves.
Taught him how to hitch a wagon.
These folks are a work in progress.
No, they aren't a work in progress because that requires them to be worked on in the first place. He says that one of the immigrants may make the world a better place like his daughter would have, but seeing his neglect for them, I can't take it seriously.
My daughter's one of those kids could have made the world better. We're doing this for the same reasons, Thomas.
LaMonica Garrett does a fine job playing Thomas, a stoic Army veteran who is equally as capable as his captain counterpart. His arc consists of him courting a Romani widow named Noemi. Noemi is not in good standing with her own people due to things that are out of her control, which is a struggle that Thomas is sympathetic to, for obvious reasons. I was quite upset with how little they focused on Thomas. Never do we get to dive into his story of where he came from and what his dreams are, save the fact that he alludes to once being a slave. It's such a shame because he could have been an interesting character if he were fleshed out a bit more. Tim and Faith had great chemistry as James and Margaret Dutton, though it may have helped that they've been married for 26 fucking years. Yosef is the leader of the Immigrants. He's a shell of a character, and the only reason I'm mentioning him is that he's top billed. He's portrayed as weak, feeble, and stupid.
You're the only one without a badge.
What about me?
You just keep your trap shut till I tell you to open it.
These characteristics don't change at all through the end of the series, and the only interesting thing we learn about him is that he can drink like a fish. I felt nothing for him when he underwent his personal tragedies because he's never shown as anything but a buffoon and a nuisance. Isabel May plays Elsa Dutton, our narrator, a girl who is coming of age. She's naive, brave, loving, light, airy, hard, horny, serious, innocent, brooding, and Jesus H. fuck did they not know what to do with her. It's as though they thought the series didn't have a wide enough variety of traits, so they dumped them all into her skill tree last minute. I was okay with Isabel May's portrayal of the character for the most part, and she did have the toughest job on set. She's basically playing 4 different characters at once. This goes for her storyline as well. They just tried to stuff as much shit into a sock as they could without giving it a proper thought. Take her romantic storyline for an example. She meets a cowboy and falls in love with him on the trail. Within 3 episodes, they're in love, he dies, she mourns him, and she falls in love again. Every male character appears to worship her like Jesus, but one thing's for sure, she's not the Virgin Mary.
Why?
Easy, Seabiscuit, you're gonna catch the clap faster than a one-winged housefly. They even have the balls to try to tell us that she's a widow in the one episode she's mourning her lost love.
She is a widow.
She only met the guy a couple months ago at best. They didn't write vows or exchange rings, but okay, keep telling yourself that.
She is a widow.
One episode after she falls in love again, she dons a completely new outfit to look like her new Indian betrothed. To reiterate, that's a 4-episode swing from her going from full-blown cowboy into full-blown Indian. Jesus, if they went one town further, I could see her leaving it with a punk rock haircut and gauged earlobes. It's one thing to convey to the viewer that Elsa's impressionable, but with the rate the writing proceeds with this expression, it's at a cost of the viewer's respect for her. As you may have probably noticed, the common theme is that I didn't find much of what I would call bad acting from the main cast outside of what appeared to be minor miscommunications. That said, I don't think they were given a tall order. Majority of this film, I imagine the director just said, say this and try to look like you're having a hard day. Shit, they even let Tim and Faith's characters hail from Tennessee and talk with their real-life accents. Speaking of which, what the fuck's going on with Elsa's accent?
Why?
She over-enunciates her WH words. She often trades R sounds for W sounds, and has a ton of extra drawl on her vowels. She sounds noticeably different from her mother and father, and I find that horribly distracting. Just listen to the difference in pronunciation from the word water, from Elsa and her mother.
Water, 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 water.
As you can see, Elsa drops the R in water, whereas Margaret doesn't. Here's another example of them sounding extremely different when it comes to the word what. Notice how much emphasis Elsa puts on the H.
You're saying it weird. Why are you putting so much emphasis on the H?
What?
Why is it that she sounds like she's straight out of New Orleans? Aren't children supposed to mimic the tone, accent, and speech patterns of their parents? Did they make a pit stop in Louisiana for half of her early childhood? Is she fucking adopted? Come to think of it, maybe she is, considering her lighter skin tone and bleach blonde hair, or as the show refers to it, yellow hair.
Lightning with the yellow hair. Hoppity poppy.
Hoppity poppity. Did any of the directors or producers think to tell Isabel May that she sounds nothing like her parents? Were they happy with her job? Well, she's narrating another show as the same character with the same voice, which I guess answers that question, and leads me into my next complaint, the narration. 1883's choice to have a narrator is perplexing. The choice to have Elsa be the narrator is puzzling even more so. I'm guessing Sheridan thought that the series would have been too dark without it. Elsa's narration is often lighthearted and optimistic. Her voice relieves the viewer when things get heavy. To be frank, I think it's highly unnecessary. A lot of times Elsa's recitals are too juvenile for me to take seriously.
Tears may flow, but I will not weep. I am a warrior,
and warriors don't cry. Tears we can't control.
They sometimes unwittingly prove to be good comic relief.
How can water float above us and fall? That would mean the sky thinks, and clouds are alive, and they decide to let it rain. But how did they decide where to rain?
No. Amateur. Lie down before you hurt yourself.
Look, I get it. They didn't know science like we do now, but you have to admit this is painful to watch. If they were dead set on the show having a narrator, I wish they would have picked a more interesting personality, like Captain Shea Brennan, who could express his intentions and perhaps relate gunfights to other battles he has seen in the past. He could talk to the viewer about Elsa while comparing and contrasting her to his own daughter. This could have no doubt helped the series depict Elsa in a different way and make her seem more desirable. This way, Elsa wouldn't have to be so bloated with traits, emotions, and life experiences. They could be expressed vicariously through somebody else. This is just one of the many characters that I believe would have enhanced the experience more than Elsa did, but ultimately the narration in and of itself was a sizable obstruction. Upon watching the opening gunfight with James, I thought the series was going to be very strong in showing a modern-day audience various tactics of old Western gunfights.
Pretty smart.
Yeah, won't fall for it again.
Shea Brennan says a line that would prove to be one of the biggest lies contriving the show.
Pretty soon they'll just shoot the horses.
Horses is probably what they're after.
They'll shoot the horses anyway. And the farmer.
Horses are a valuable commodity, perhaps the most valuable commodity in this story, but it is never even humored that they may be killed, even incidentally. I mean, some of these gunfights take place with upwards of 10 people bouncing around on horseback, dual-wielding pistols and bows. It's not like the show tries to convey that everyone is a deadeye throughout these conditions. There are many shots that are thrown that never strike a horse. There are plenty of opportunities for bandits to say, this is getting risky, let's kill the horse and the person, but they never do, even though the idea of it happening is one of the first things stated in the show.
They'll shoot the horses anyway.
Another thing that feels contrived is how many people speak English. Yosef is supposedly the only immigrant that speaks English, but Noemi's English is better than most modern-day high schoolers. You'll notice as the show goes on, more and more immigrants start speaking English, or at least understand it.
He beat me, destroy my wagon, strand me here. Only thing they have of use is guns and horses.
Every group of Indian soldiers happens to have somebody who speaks good English. You see, I thought they would have had to hire an interpreter for a lot of coin and protect him at all costs so they can offer trades and pass through Indian territory unscathed, but apparently that's not necessary. I find it hilarious that eventually the show gives up on James' son. They shoehorn him into some earlier scenes, but later on he is rarely mentioned, put on the back burner by none other than Elsa. I'm perfectly fine with this because children are notoriously terrible actors. The only good performance that comes to mind was Leonardo DiCaprio in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but that's considered insensitive now because he's not mentally challenged. Keep it up, Hollywood. Pretty soon you'll all just act like yourselves and there'll be no need for credits. At one point, Margaret leaves the poor fucker with 2 cowboys she's never exchanged a line of dialogue with to chase down and murder a wounded bandit. It's okay, we know the son has to live on for the lineage to carry on to Yellowstone. He was never in any real danger. Other dishonorable mentions are the gunfight in episode 7. Our heroes are outnumbered 13-3, not including Elsa, who doesn't fire a round but is chased and shot at for a long time. Not once do any of the bandits shoot her horse after missing her dozens of times, and she is saved in the nick of time by her second faux husband. And if that's not bad enough, the other 3 win the gunfight whilst all getting shot. James gets shot in the back, but it was through his belt. That was lucky. Thomas was shot twice. Neither were fatal. That was lucky. And Shea was shot in the fucking head, but it was just a graze. That was lucky. The plot armor in this scene alone is enough to suit the Persian army. For me, this is where the show jumped the shark and I stopped taking it seriously. The dialogue is good in most parts. Some lines are bad, but one is so egregious that it gives me a headache, so I have to address it. When Elsa is dying, Shea comforts James by saying,
She has outsmiled me, outloved me, outfought me. She's outlived me.
Oh, come on. I get you're trying to comfort a dad whose child is expiring, but be realistic. Maybe she outsmiled you. After all, you haven't smiled at all this show. You were in your 70s and had a wife and a child, and Elsa loved more than you? You were a captain in the army and have frequent nightmares over previous battles, but she fought harder than you?
And when I ran out of bullets, I killed with my sword, and when my sword broke, I killed with my boots and bare hands.
In this series alone, you've gotten into more gunfights and took a bullet to the head. Just say she outlived you and leave it open for interpretation. The scene where Elsa dies is supposed to be beautiful and poignant. I felt very little sadness during the scene because the emotional payoff was neutered. Certainly everyone should have seen this coming. Remember that flash forward from 10 episodes ago? Come to think of it, where have I seen this scene before? Ah yes, the pilot of Yellowstone ended in the same fashion as well. All the way down to the bird and the line, "Rest for a bit."
Rest for a bit.
Just rest here a bit.
The two scenes being so similar isn't just a cute reference for superfans, it's a writing tool used to subliminally evoke feelings of empathy through nostalgia. Don't worry, I felt nothing for the death of Lee Dutton either, because he was simply a plot device for John Dutton to experience loss. Though in Elsa's case we had plenty of time to contemplate her fate. It should be no surprise that an arrow to the abdomen is fatal in that period of time, and I'm very happy the show retained its realism in that regard. Or did it? The ending shows Elsa riding together with her second lover in the show, Sam. If she did in fact die, wouldn't she be riding next to Ennis?
Well?
He's the first of her lovers, and I didn't mention either of their names until now because they're really not that important. Ennis was with Elsa for a longer period of time, and he is dead too. Are we to believe that Sam died off screen? If he did, then shouldn't Ennis be sitting on his horse in the background, staring at them in dismay? They could probably show him riding the bison that they viciously murdered together. Either she's dead and there's a loose end with Sam's death not being shown, or she's alive and the entire emotional context of the previous scenes invalidated. Seriously, show, I know you want to give us something happy to leave us with because the ending is so daunting, but don't do it at the sake of your continuity. I'd like to conclude this review with a bit of praise. Modern-day cinema is on a counterproductive virtue-signaling rampage. Among the most relevant of these ideas is diversity. Time and time again, we see diversity for the sake of it in all the wrong places, and it does nothing but drag down an audience's immersion. I agree that having a diverse cast is a good thing, but it has to be implemented correctly. 1883 does a great job of showing different races and ethnical backgrounds in a way that makes perfect sense for where and when it was set. That is a huge win in and of itself. I also greatly appreciate a show that isn't afraid to show gloomy, undesirable scenes. It adds to the novelty of old Western society, seeing people struggle with the slow death of a rattlesnake bite, a flesh wound turned lethal, and frequent thoughts of Sudoku. They really did live through a struggle that we today have no concept of. I love the ambiance that 1883 presented. The landscapes are beautiful with lovely attention to detail on things like the Milky Way being visible in the night sky. Every town square and saloon looked brilliantly dated and the costume design looked quality. The series was scored well, and I noticed parts where a scene wasn't scored at all because the scene didn't need it. A finite detail that a lot of cinema doesn't seem to understand. Not all scenes need the emotional touch of music. I didn't hate 1883. I just wanted it to be great. Set and design is queen, but story and character development is king. And in 1883's case, it's checkmate. There's still time for the ever-increasing lore to churn out something truly great, and if it happens, I plan on singing its praises. But for now, I'll be waiting with bated breath.